Hello, Rick here, reviewing episode 10 of season 2 Star Trek Discovery, The Red Angel. But you already knew that because you clicked on a video with most of those exact words in the title. The spoilers ahead, and if you've not seen any of the season 2 so far, well, this series is really not geared up for people to join halfway through. So let's get started. There were several lines in this episode that felt ill-conceived, especially regarding the suspicions levelled against Burnham being the Red Angel. Operating under that theory, her demanding to be included in all of their plans to capture the time traveller seems a poor idea. Depending on the version of time travel they're operating with, she would remember the trap being set by the time she became the Red Angel. Martin Green did an excellent performance throughout, despite these oversights. Spock's dedication to a logical conclusion is put to the test here, as the understanding of the grandfather paradox means that the future Burnham would have to save her life in order to exist. Therefore, regardless of how painful and emotional it was to watch, logic dictates that the Angel will appear to remedy the situation in favour of self-preservation. There was ample opportunity in this episode for Spock and Burnham to reconcile to a degree, and the humour from early on was satisfyingly dry in its delivery. The banter between them as Spock shared his insights into Burnham's personality flaws made me genuinely chuckle, and goes a long way to endearing me to these characters. That being said, at no point did I ever believe Burnham to be in any actual danger, because plot armour. But the toxic atmosphere was still way harsher than its simple description suggested. The opening scene, mourning the loss of Ariam, was very extravagant but honestly did little for me. I feel like in-universe, the crew, especially Detmer, Owasakun and Tilly and Burnham, were close to her. I, on the other hand, as a viewer, was not. The experience was all down to the actors themselves selling their grief, which they did, but I never felt included in that. Funnily, some of the less overstated scenes were some of the better ones in my opinion. The standouts being Culber talking to the Admiral, Burnham talking things through with Spock, and the pre-planned jitters with Ash Tyler. Culber approaching the Admiral for advice was a warming moment, and I felt that he was vulnerable. But Cornell understands his predicament, and I get a definite sense of relief from Cruz that someone else is suggesting that it's okay to challenge his sense of identity. Gradually he is being eased back into his position on the Discovery, and as he tried to approach Stamets to smooth things over, he finds that Stamets has withdrawn into his work in defence. Very true to his character. Though I have to say that was a super awkward scene between Georgiou, Stamets and Culber. I think that was the point and the humour, but awkward humour just doesn't work for me. I'm not even convinced that that was the goal. I was completely with Tilly on that one.
What just happened?
Tilly continues to serve as an in for the audience onto some of the more dramatic or sci-fi themes of the show, and it works. At the beginning of the episode, Tilly recovers some data from Ariam that indicates that Burnham is in fact the Red Angel. So let's all act surprised for them. This had me sigh, because I thought that this was the predictable direction that they'd taken it in. Despite it making sense for the plot, I was a little disheartened that this was the route they chose to take. Well played, Discovery. So upon capture of the Angel, we unmask it to discover it's Burnham's mother. A character we have never seen on screen as of yet, but in theory, the motivations to save Burnham can be attributed to family. The supposition on our part of who is the Red Angel plays right into the overall story's writing trap, and I do enjoy figuring out plot twists before they happen, as do a large percentage of the viewer base from what I've seen. So introducing a character with barely any setup severely reduces the risk of the audience guessing that Tyler was Vok and Lorca was from the Terran universe. You know, things like that. I say barely any setup, as it was alluded to earlier in the series that there was more to Burnham's parents' deaths than we knew, so the questions were raised, just seemingly unimportant at the time. I assumed that they'd be tied into a B-plot somewhere down the line, not at the centre of it all. Even when it was announced that her mother was the project head of Daedalus, the time travel suit, we remain fairly convinced that she was killed by Klingons. Which then raises several more questions, and even could challenge some assumptions we've made already. We know from what point in the future Control is operating, approximately 500 years from Discovery, but is Burnham's mother from that future too? Or did she jump forwards to the future, setting things in motion? If she was always the lead on Daedalus, then perhaps in her native chronology, her daughter Burnham died, and her whole motivation for working on the tech was to save her, leading to a butterfly effect of changes that she's now trying to correct. I think they'll just explain the brain scans as the same by saying that they're family, or perhaps Michael will actually use the suit at some point, and that is who Spock met. One thing that still bothers me, that probably won't irritate everyone, is the level of advancement on display from the Red Angel is far beyond Starfleet, and I'm pretty sure even Section 31, whose technology level has been portrayed as around 100 years more advanced than standard issue, and this whole time crystal thing. I only accepted it from Mudd in Season 1, as he apparently procured it from a higher dimensional being, so I assumed it was something not even native to our existence. Actually, a quick edit here, I decided to leave my previous statement in as it reflected my experiences watching this episode. However, I began to research time crystals and discovered that they are in fact a theorised state of fourth dimensional matter hypothesised by a Professor Frank Wilczek of MIT in 2012. So okay, a current quote-unquote real thing, but it just has such an out-of-place name for a Trek show. Time crystal. There is a reference from Leland in this scene too that they were examining the timelines, and there was a theory that certain technological leaps were made by the intervention of time travellers, which is true in the Trek universe with episodes such as Enterprise's Regeneration, where Borg remnants from First Contact were discovered and classified, and even earlier with Voyager's episode Future's End that had the timeship Aeon crash in 1967 and spark a leap in technology based on reverse engineering the vessel. The Trek universe's timeline has always been a mess. Anyway, not too much more to say. This episode, much like the previous, served to answer and further the plot, but some dialogue stood out to me as not really thought through. Like the allusion to the Ninth Circle of Hell from Georgiou based on the Inferno that was a lake of frozen ice. What has that got to do with asphyxiation in a burning wind? Dunno, but maybe Miradante wrote it differently. The quieter character moments were well done, but there were also those scenes that seemed to be trying to elicit more of a reaction from me than they got. Burnham punching Leland comes to mind. The plot is furthered, and once again we have a new set of questions and the return of the Control AI that may have done something to Leland. Basically, I guess I'm trying to summarise that this episode felt like a first draft of a script, trying to hit home certain points, but without some of the nuance and polish of earlier dialogue, but only in places. It was an odd mix. What do you think? Burnham's mum, originally from the future, went to the future, and where is she operating from now? My guess is she was from the future from the start, explaining her knowledge of how to build a time suit to begin with. I'd buy that as an explanation, and I look forwards to finding out. Thanks for listening to my review of the Red Angel, and I'll be reading through the comments as usual, so until next video, see you later. Goodbye.